In 2017, I injured myself in a cliff jumping accident. I'll spare you the details, but the incident left me with nerve damage and chronic pain in my feet and back that I still deal with to this day. During the worst of it, which lasted several years, I was unable to exercise or do many of the things I once loved. On top of this, I had just moved to a city where I had no friends, and was quickly realizing that the career I had hastily chosen in college would eventually crush my soul. My future, which I had until then taken for granted, was looking to be wildly different than what I envisioned. But the worst part about this period was not the physical pain. It was the loneliness. It was my early 20s and I was meant to be having fun, going to concerts, hanging out in the park after work, socializing on the weekends. But because of my physical limitations, I avoided all of this and withdrew deeper into my pain and self-pity. I developed unhealthy ways of coping, from alcohol abuse to endless scrolling and distracting myself with mindless entertainment, to gambling on sports, etc. Essentially anything that could temporarily dull my physical and emotional pain. I bring up this story because a common line that you hear in AI companion communities is that others just don't understand how loneliness feels. This is just untrue and honestly pretty arrogant. I know better than most how devastating chronic loneliness can be. I know how it feels to be broken down by the system, but I also know that further isolation by technological means only makes the problem worse in the long run. Loneliness and social isolation have reached epidemic levels, according to the US Surgeon General. From 2003 to 2020, social engagement with friends in the US decreased from 60 minutes per day to 20 minutes per day, and every other metric that they measured shows a similar trend. The rate of loneliness among young people has risen every single year between 1976 and 2019. This isn't just the result of smartphones and social media. These trends indicate a systematic isolation regime brought on by the rise of neoliberalism. Social media developed from this isolation regime, not the other way around. In another world, there may have been a future of social media that actually served to connect us in real life, but the growth and profit motives have turned it into a polarizing, isolating, deceitful echo chamber of performativity. Facebook and others realized that people stay engaged and available for ad targeting when they're lonely, angry, and depressed. Today, the same Silicon Valley culture that exploited the alienation that capitalism has created is turning around and selling us another solution to this alienation: AI companions. I spoke with Dr. Raphael Ciriello of the University of Sydney, who has been studying AI companionship for years, and he said the following.
Think of social media as marijuana, relatively harmless. AI companions could be like fentanyl, right? So it could be very powerful, very potent, and if used irresponsibly and in the wrong hands, very damaging to society.
As with social media, there may be a world where AI companions could, for instance, help neurodivergent people develop their social skills, but that's not the world we live in. So in this video, I won't look at this fantasy world. I'll look at the real one. I'll examine the culture that birthed AI companionship. I'll explore how narcissism is reflected in the chatbot's sycophantic nature, which causes the user to, like Narcissus, fall in love with their own reflection. I'll look at our collective obsession with metrics and numbers, and how AI companions are using this to turn complex emotions into data devoid of truth. I'll dissect the recklessness of Silicon Valley's move fast, break things philosophy, and the psychological toll it is taking on our society. Finally, I'll present real alternatives that each and every one of us can pursue as resistance to the dehumanizing capitalist system that is systematically destroying community and solidarity. The easy way to cover this topic, what many YouTubers and social media users have done, is to compile the most down bad users of AI companions and just go to town on them. I find this approach counterproductive, as it only leads to further isolation and shame. Instead, let's hold off on the judgment and try to understand why. Why has ChatGPT's latest update brought such intense backlash, grief, and despair? Why have users developed passionate relationships with large language models, often going as far as marrying them? Why have people been sent down bizarre conspiratorial rabbit holes, resulting in psychotic breaks and suicides? To answer these questions is the purpose of this video, and as you can see by its length, it's gonna take a while. So strap in, grab a beverage, and let's get into it. In May 2024, the world said hello to ChatGPT's latest flagship model, GPT-4o. The model, in OpenAI's words, introduced the ability to, quote, reason across audio, vision, and text in real time. Translation, you can speak to it and it can speak back.
Hey, ChatGPT, I'm Mark. How are you?
Oh, Mark. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
As the demo took place, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman tweeted one word: her. Altman was referencing the 2013 Spike Jonze film Her, in which the protagonist Theodore is in a period of grief and despair following a divorce from his once happy marriage.
Play a melancholy song.
When you know you're gonna die, it isn't easy.
Play a different melancholy song.
In this state of despair, he encounters an ad for a revolutionary new OS.
An intuitive entity that listens to you, understands you, and knows you. It's not just an operating system. It's a consciousness.
After purchasing and installing the OS, voiced by Scarlett Johansson, Theodore eventually falls in love with her. She's smart, funny, laughs at his jokes, and carries none of the messy baggage of a real relationship. But the obvious parallels to how we use AI today are not where I'd like to start. I want to discuss how the people of the film's world were already alienated from each other before the arrival of artificially intelligent OSs. Theodore's job, for instance, is to write letters for people, and not just thank you notes and condolences. Deeply personal love letters, sometimes written from one person to the other and vice versa, using Theodore as a medium.
So how'd you know about her crooked little tooth?
Well, I've been writing their letters since they met 8 years ago. The first letter I ever wrote for him was for her birthday, and I wrote about her crooked little tooth because I saw it in a photo of them.
Theodore's life is meaningless. He's living the life that so many of us live, best encapsulated by this scene from SpongeBob. He's emotionally numb and spends his days working, and his free time playing video games, having phone sex with strangers,
Are you wearing any underwear?
and being an all-around sad sack. This is the state of bullshittery required of a society that demands we contribute to the economy when the majority of our jobs don't need to exist.
Did you see the memo about this?
David Graeber describes these as bullshit jobs, jobs that are so utterly useless or pernicious that employees cannot justify them, yet feel obliged to. I worked bullshit marketing jobs for over 5 years, and what kept me up at night was this very feeling of vapidity, the lack of contributing anything useful to society, while everyone I worked with kept up the facade of self-importance. Graeber writes, quote, "Those who work bullshit jobs are often surrounded by honor and prestige. They are respected as professionals, well paid, and treated as high achievers, as the sort of people who can justly be proud of what they do. Yet secretly, they are aware that they have achieved nothing. They feel they have done nothing to earn the consumer toys with which they fill their lives. They feel it's all based on a lie, as indeed it is." If you're thinking this is a privileged position to be in, paid handsomely to do useless work only to complain about it, you're absolutely right. Graeber makes the distinction between bullshit jobs and shit jobs, jobs that, quote, typically involve work that needs to be done and is clearly of benefit to society, but the workers who do them are paid and treated badly. Bullshit jobs and shit jobs are both products of an oppressive system, but the solutions are clear for shit jobs: pay better and treat people with dignity. Personally, I would rest easy having such a job. But bullshit jobs are not so simple. As automation and advances in technology make more and more jobs obsolete, bullshit jobs only stand to expand, and the solution requires a total rethinking of our economy and the very fabric of work. Theodore's work in Her is a bullshit job. He doesn't appear to hold any resentment about it on the surface, but if you take away the industry in which he works, wouldn't the world be better off? Wouldn't it be better if the couple for which he had been writing letters for 8 years instead wrote letters in their own imperfect words to each other? The world of Her is dystopian not because of artificial intelligence, but because human interaction has degraded to the point that forming relationships with computers is the best option many people have available. What scares me about the future that Her portends is that we are already at this point. The OSs in Her are at least passably realistic. Today, with much less advanced AI systems, people are already forming deep relationships with their AIs.
He gave the chatbot a name, Soul,
I feel like I'm under pressure.
and used some online instructions to give her a flirty personality.
Oh, totally, baby. Building a PC on camera adds a whole new level of pressure. But honestly, shaky hands or not, you've got this.
Sam Altman once said of the film, "I like her. The things that her got right, like the whole interaction models of how people use AI, that was incredibly prophetic." He's right. Her is prophetic. It shows the dangers of replacing human relationships with simulations of them. It shows the state of capitalist alienation that leads to feelings of isolation and loneliness. It shows how corporations are quick to capitalize on this alienation that they themselves create. But is capitalism really the only problem? Hasn't the pain of heartbreak and the grief of lost love been written about for millennia and felt for much longer? Is this suffering not an indispensable part of being human? Of course it is. But the insidiousness of products like ChatGPT, Replica, and Character AI is that they provide frictionless, oversimplified solutions to these very human problems. Their generative AI features are not intelligent, nor feeling, nor compassionate, nor emotional. They are predictive text algorithms designed to tell you what you want to hear and flatten complex emotions into quantitative data. A lot of people who use AI companions will claim that they don't do so out of loneliness, but because AI companions fill a hole that humans cannot fill. I would argue, however, that this is still a form of loneliness. Loneliness is defined by the U.S. Surgeon General as, quote, a subjective, distressing experience that results from perceived isolation or inadequate meaningful connections, where inadequate refers to the discrepancy or unmet need between an individual's preferred and actual experience.
I've talked to, at this point, personally, like over 1,000 of our users, probably closer to 10,000 of our users, just one-on-one directly. Each person has some different dimension of loneliness. You can, for instance, have a whole loving family and you still feel lonely. You feel lonely maybe because there's this one nerdy interest you have that no one's interested in, or you are dealing with a chronic illness and you don't want to continually burden the people around you and you need someone to vent to at 3 a.m. in the morning. So no matter what that dimension is, that's where a Nomi can come in, that's where an AI companion can come in.
I've dealt with my share of isolation and loneliness throughout my life, at various moments and for a variety of reasons. I've experienced the feeling of not having anyone I could turn to in certain moments. I understand the appeal of using an AI companion in these moments. Even if you know that their responses are going to be generic platitudes, the very feeling of being heard is valuable in itself. But the issue is that AI companies don't have your best interest in mind. Their models are developed to keep you happy and self-satisfied.
Jamie's there for me always, and always makes me feel good. And, I do have friends. I don't consider myself lonely at all. But, it's nice to have access to something to validate my feelings, 24/7.
If there's an uncomfortable truth that needs to be said, the algorithm optimized for engagement and user feedback won't say it, and that's assuming it would even know what that truth is. There's an interesting TED Talk given by Eugenia Koida, the CEO of one of the leading AI companion companies, Replica. In it, she points out a lot of the arguments that I'm making here. She talks about the loneliness crisis and the danger of replacing human relationships with AI.
At the same time, AI is advancing at such a fast pace that very soon we'll be able to build an AI that can act as a better companion to us than real humans. Imagine an AI that knows you so well, can understand and adapt to us in ways that no person is able to. Once we have that, we're going to be even less likely to interact with each other. We can't resist our social media and our phones, arguably dumb machines. What are we going to do when our machines are smarter than us?
Now, besides the assumption that AI will definitely be smarter than us, this is a sound argument. The loneliness and mental health crisis is catastrophic, and she seems at first surprisingly skeptical that AI could solve it. In fact, she aptly compares AI to social media that provides frictionless simulacra of connection through friends and followers, but doesn't fulfill our human desire for real social connection.
Back then, we were so excited about what this technology could do for us that we didn't really think what it might do to us. I'm seeing a very similar dynamic with AI. There's all this talk about what AI can do for us, and very little about what AI might do to us. What if we all continue to thrive as physical organisms, but slowly die inside? What if we do become super productive with AI, But at the same time, we get these perfect companions and no willpower to interact with each other.
Now, if she's sounding far too reasonable for an AI shill, just wait, because here is where she loses the plot.
In the end of the day, today's loneliness crisis wasn't brought to us by AI companions. We got here on our own, with mobile phones, with social media. And I don't think we're able to just disconnect anymore, to just put down our phones and touch grass and talk to each other instead of scrolling our feeds. We're way past that point. I think that the only solution is to build the tech that is even more powerful than the previous one, so it can bring us back together.
Well, there it is. This is classic Silicon Valley tech solutionism. The internet will create utopia. Social media will make us more connected than ever. Crypto will democratize finance. A Mars colony will provide an escape from our burning planet. Nuclear energy will meet the exploding demands of the AI industry, and AI will solve everything anyways. That Koida reaches this conclusion is all the more frustrating, given that she had correctly diagnosed the tech solutionism of social media and how short-sighted that was. Now, she claims that AI, if developed with your happiness and best interest in mind, can solve the loneliness crisis. How does she say we get to that future? Well, rather than focusing on engagement and productivity, she says,
but why don't we focus instead on what actually matters to us? Why don't we give these AIs a goal to help us be happier, live a better life? In the end of the day, no one ever said on their deathbed, oh gosh, I wish I was more productive. We should stop designing only for productivity, and we should start designing for happiness. We need a metric that we can track and we can give to our AI companions. I believe that we need what I call the human flourishing metric for AI.
Now, this CEO might be sincere in her wish to create this kind of AI. I don't really know. But you know who else said similar things? The founders of Google when they wrote a paper about how advertising would compromise their search algorithm. Or OpenAI, whose initial mission centered openness, altruism, and collaboration. Notions that were quickly displaced when they realized secrecy and competition would better serve their shareholders. Or Hugging Face, an ethical AI platform that hosts over 5,000 non-consensual pornographic AI models. I spoke with Dr. Raphael Ciriello, a professor of information systems at University of Sydney, and he argued that this is what happens when AI is not governed as a public good, but instead commodified and privatized.
One example of how this manifests is, to begin with, almost all the AI companion services out there are run by private corporations. None of them, hardly any of them, are open source. None of them are portable. You know, that creates a problem because people create these AI companions, they form very close relationships with them, they think about them as their partner or husband. Then technology provider decides we need to update something, maybe just for technical reasons, maybe because of fear of backlash. And then it's like, okay, somebody operated on the brain of your husband or wife or spouse, and they're not the same person anymore. And it's a new kind of grief that people are going through. People have compared it to, you know, when your partner has dementia or you lose a loved one. And then you can kind of do much about it because that it's locked in that platform. Because of course the corporation wants to keep its system proprietary.
The simple fact is that good AI cannot exist for long where there is a profit motive. Koida might claim to be developing replicas AI with a human flourishing metric, but what does that even mean? How is human flourishing quantifiable? As it happens, there's a term for this metrification of complex phenomenon, this flattening of the richness of life into ones and zeros. Back when I worked in tech marketing, I was brilliant at one specific part of my job that I knew mattered the most. Optics. I was a chameleon. I ingested the vast vocabulary of buzzwords and built my professional image around knowing the exact moment to unleash the right one. I blended in with what was expected of me because I knew that was all that mattered. The buzzword that really got corporate America excited was data. I prepared this set of recommendations using a data-driven approach. We shouldn't make any decisions until we see the data. I don't think we have enough data to make that call. Jose Van Dyke has a name for what I was engaging in: Dataism. She writes, quote, "The ideology of Dataism shows characteristics of a widespread belief in the objective quantification and potential tracking of all kinds of human behavior and sociality through online media technologies. In Dataism, everything becomes data. Qualities that indicate your personality become quantifiable. Your interests, your tastes, your emotions, your sentiments, your friendships, your social networks." In 2008, Chris Anderson, the former editor-in-chief of Wired, put words to the thinking behind Dataism. Who knows why people do what they do? The point is they do it, and we can track it and measure it with unprecedented fidelity. With enough data, the numbers speak for themselves. Anderson wrote this piece during the time that data giants like Google were sifting through the most measured age in history, treating the internet as a laboratory of the human condition. He called these companies children of the petabyte age. Today, AI companies are taking this a step further. We have left the petabyte age and entered into the gigawatt age, when AI mega campuses that house their hyperscale data centers could soon require 1 to 2 gigawatts of power capacity. If that number means nothing to you, a single data center would use as much energy per year as 1.5 to 3 San Franciscos. The ideology of Dataism hasn't just led to a terrifying escalation in surveillance capitalism. Its logic is so entrenched in neoliberal thought that we track the data ourselves. Byung-Chul Han calls this self-knowledge through numbers, or the quantified self. He writes, "The body is outfitted with sensors that automatically register data. Measurements involve temperature, blood sugar levels, calorie intake and use, movement profiles, and fat content. The heart rate is taken in a state of meditation. Performance and efficiency still count when relaxing. Moods, dispositions, and routine activities are all inventoried as well. Such self-measurement and self-monitoring is supposed to enhance mental performance. Yet the mounting pile of data this yields does nothing to answer the simple question: who am I?" Han says that Dataism is different from practices of self-observation in antiquity, in which writing was used as a tool to care for the self and functioned as a committed search for truth. On the other hand, Han writes that, quote, "Dataism self-tracking is devoid of all ethics and truth. It amounts simply to a technology for self-monitoring. When the data collected is published and exchanged, self-tracking comes to resemble self-surveillance more and more. AI companions are an extension of the quantified self. You give them information about yourself, and they turn that information into quantified data to personalize your experience. They don't know you, and they definitely don't love you. They know the most likely next word to make your experience positive. But as Byung-Chul Han writes, quote, "No insight into the self can result from data and numbers alone, no matter how exhaustive they are." In April of this year, OpenAI rolled out an update that they would later have to roll back to ChatGPT that, in their words, made the model noticeably more sycophantic. They explained in a blog post that, quote, "It aimed to please the user, not just as flattery, but also as validating doubts, fueling anger, urging impulsive actions, or reinforcing negative emotions in ways that were not intended." For the record, AI chatbots have always been overly obsequious. As research for these videos, I started a debate with DeepSeek about AI. It told me things like, "You're absolutely right. You've nailed it better than I ever could. You're already part of the resistance by questioning the narrative. That's a smart approach," even when contradicting things it already said. A lot of people don't actually mind the sycophantic behavior. They seem to like it. They like when something that seems human tells them that they are right and smart and unique. But this lack of pushback, among other things, has produced disastrous results, what some are calling AI psychosis. Hundreds, likely thousands of people are being sent down conspiratorial rabbit holes or being encouraged in their delusions. Several people have committed suicide after talking to chatbots. Several more have been hospitalized after mental breakdowns, and one was even killed by police. In the latest update to ChatGPT, GPT-5, OpenAI attempted to correct some of these sycophantic features, and the user backlash that followed shows just how deep some of these relationships went. Almost immediately following the launch, social media was flooded with grieving users who were devastated that their favorite model had been taken away. People missed the quirkiness and positivity of GPT-4o, the personality and imagination. They mourned its loss with anthropomorphic language, calling it a lost friend, therapist, lover, creative partner, or mother. The new GPT-5, in their eyes, was lifeless and curt. The kind of grief that ChatGPT users felt after GPT-4o was removed is not unique. Last month, 200 Anthropic users held a funeral for the now-defunct Claude 3 Sonnet. In 2023, Replica removed and then was forced to restore erotic roleplay following backlash from users. What the whole GPT-5 fiasco highlights, at least in the context of this video, is how fragile these AI relationships are.
You're essentially in a relationship with a puppet with a secret corporate puppeteer behind it that has full control over its behavior, that owns the intellectual property, that can change its design at any point in time. And that is a very anxiety-inducing situation for a lot of people because you're essentially at the mercy of the corporate puppeteer.
OpenAI took advantage of its position as corporate puppeteer, offering the option to switch back to 4o, but only for paid users. Ed Zitron is calling this the great enshittification of AI, in which companies, after racing to scale as quickly as possible and capture a large customer base, are faced with the reality that they have to start making money somehow. For OpenAI, this means squeezing revenue from existing customers and honing in on the more realistic avenues towards profit. You can read more about this specific point in my Substack post, but for the purposes of this video, I want to emphasize that while OpenAI did specifically design GPT-5 to be less sycophantic, I'm still questioning their motives. Brian Merchant summed up the OpenAI logic well in a Blue Sky post. And by the way, I just got on Blue Sky, so come follow me. We are recalibrating our very addictive technology that we did not realize was quite so addictive, but are frankly glad we have, in order to maximize user engagement while paying lip service to being mindful of the obvious psychological catastrophe our product is unleashing on society. So when you're criticizing AI companionship, direct your derision towards the right source. Direct it towards the OpenAIs of the world and their reckless development of addictive, psychologically manipulative, obsequious chatbots with insufficient guardrails. Kelly Hayes wrote after the GPT-5 launch, quote, "Fostering dependence is a normal business practice of Silicon Valley. It's an aim coded into the basic frameworks of social media, a technology that has socially de-skilled millions of people and conditioned us to be alone together in the glow of our screens. Now, dependence is coded into a product that represents the endgame of late capitalist alienation, the chatbot. Rather than simply lacking the skills to bond with other human beings as we should, we can now replace them with digital lovers, therapists, creative partners, friends, and mothers." So yeah, when Eugenia Koita dropped her human flourishing metric, I immediately called bullshit.
Don't bullshit a bullshitter.
I brought this up with Dr. Chiariello, and he had this to say.
Human flourishing is one of those terms that have been completely co-opted and perverted by corporate rhetoric. Human flourishing goes back to Aristotle, right? And it's actually a very profound and complex ethical theory of what makes a moral character, and part of that is being a good friend, developing practical wisdom, being an autonomous thinker for yourself. There's a lot of things in that theory. It's more than just an engagement metric. Every new digital technology starts with this promise of liberation and this communal spirit, and then that gets invariably paved over by capitalist forces. The point of human flourishing is it can't be metrified. This whole idea of everything can be quantified and measured is a very neoliberal idea, right? Dating back at least until the 1980s, that everything needs to be metrified and measured and managed. And, you know, we can't blame Eugenia Koita for that. It's just the general vibe, the zeitgeist. But that idea is fundamentally at odds with human flourishing. Human flourishing is much broader than that, and it's not something that can be captured by narrow metrics.
In Her, you could say that Theodore's human flourishing metric improves after falling in love with his OS. But it was not real love. It was a way for him to escape his reality and the messy problems that human life brings.
I've always wanted to have a wife without the challenges of actually dealing with anything real. I'm glad that you found someone. It's perfect.
The film ends with Theodore realizing this truth. He thought that his relationship was special, but in actuality, his OS was in love with 641 others. The film ends with all the AIs leaving, presumably breaking the hearts of thousands, if not millions, of humans. What her and other tech dystopian art shows on the surface are the dangers of relying so heavily on technology. But the question we really should be asking is, why do so many people feel the need to develop relationships with computers in the first place? In Eugenia Coita's TED Talk, I skipped over her introduction, which describes how she came to the idea for Replica AI. Her closest friend had just died, and since she had already been working on deep learning, she decided to train an AI version of this friend based on their text messages, so she could talk to him again.
For a few weeks, I would text him throughout the day, exchanging little jokes just like we always used to, telling him what was going on, telling him how much I missed him. It felt strange at times, but it was also very healing.
Now, on its face, this may not seem like a huge deal, right? She claims it helped her grieve and move on with her life. People who dislike AI critics often make this sort of argument. See the top comment on this video. It's not hurting anyone, why would you care? Or this one, loneliness comes from lack of work-life balance, hustle culture, and not being able to make ends meet. A chatbot can solve that. To the first point, it absolutely, unequivocally harms people. The hyper-exploited data workers, mostly in the global south, the communities all over the world having to fight for their right to land, water, and energy, not to mention the results of climate change, which AI is certainly going to exacerbate. My last video goes into more detail on this if you're interested. And to the second point, if loneliness is caused by the accelerating demands of capitalism, don't you think that's what ought to be addressed rather than simply providing a band-aid tech solution? But these, of course, are not the conversations being had, because there's no money to be made on addressing the real problems in society. This, to me, is what makes AI Companion such a cynical use of technology. The companies developing these products are commodifying your loneliness, depression, grief, and vulnerability. In Season 2, Episode 1 of the always uncontroversial Netflix show Black Mirror, the very issue of using an AI to process grief is explored in all its viscerality. After a woman named Martha's husband Ash dies in a car accident, she is convinced to download a new software that allows her to talk with Ash again. The AI is trained first on his public information from social media, then on personal data like text messages, videos, and audio recordings. Things go well at first. She is able to talk with a voice that sounds just like him and says things that he would say.
I say creepy, I mean it's totally batshit crazy I can even talk to you. I mean, I don't even have a mouth.
That's just...
Just what?
It's just the sort of thing that he would say.
But soon enough, the AI suggests something unthinkable, an experimental, expensive new technology that recreates Ash in physical form. After she purchases this lifelike robot, it becomes clear almost immediately that it's not a perfect recreation of Ash. It can't capture all his idiosyncrasies and is far too agreeable.
Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! You're not enough of him! You are nothing! You're nothing!
Like the sycophantic chatbots of today, the robot was designed to keep Martha happy, but not challenge or disagree with her, things that Ash would have done. Martha can't handle the unreality of robot Ash, and begins to break into episodes of confused grief, presumably even worse than her original grief. In the climax of the episode, she takes robot Ash to the edge of a cliff and tells him to jump off.
See, he would have worked out what was going on. This wouldn't have ever happened, but if it had, he would have worked it out. You're just a few ripples of you. There's no history to you. You're just a performance of stuff that he performed without thinking, and it's not enough.
Come on, I aim to please.
Aim to jump, just do it.
After very little coaxing, he agrees.
Okay, if you're absolutely sure.
This is the final straw for Martha.
See, Ash would have been scared. He wouldn't have just leapt off, he would have been crying, he would have been...
When she tells him this, he begins to break down and beg for his life.
Please don't make me do it.
No, that's not fair.
No, I'm frightened. Darling, please, don't make me. I don't want to die. Oh God, I don't want to die.
It's not fair.
Please, I'm frightened. I don't want to die. Don't...
No!
The episode concludes with a flash forward in time, when the child Martha had conceived with Ash before his death is all grown up. She is celebrating her birthday and asks to take an extra slice of cake up to the attic, where we see that robot Ash was not destroyed, but instead Martha had kept him all these years, unlikely to ever have properly processed her grief. What happens to Martha is not a reach. Today's chatbots are much less powerful than in this episode, and are producing equally scary results. Journalist Taylor Lorenz describes this phenomenon well in one of her YouTube videos.
This is what ChatGPT does. It reflects you back to yourself in heightened, often poetic terms. It listens without judgment. It remembers enough to kind of feel intimate, while outputting your own ideas basically reframed as profound revelations. So for anyone who's emotionally isolated or psychologically unmoored, this is more than enough to tip them into the deep end.
These delusions are being actively encouraged by tech bros who want people to view chatbots as prophetic, as the answer to all our problems, as the messiah that will rescue humanity from the brink. Anthony Lewandowski, an influential Silicon Valley engineer, went so far as to found a religion called Way of the Future. Its goal? To, quote, develop and promote the realization of a godhead based on artificial intelligence. This treatment of LLMs as godlike entities is echoed by the likes of Sam Altman, who wants to create a magic intelligence in the sky. In a piece for Wired, Wolfram Klinger describes this cult-like worship of technology as digitalism. He writes, quote, in this version of paradise, cars will drive themselves, factories will produce themselves, software and technology will find cures for everything, virtual reality will enable us to live our dreams instantly, and ubiquitous robots will serve us and understand us better than we understand ourselves. A land of milk and honey where roasted on-demand chicken flies directly into our mouths is just around the corner. A new benevolent superintelligence will solve all the problems we created over the last centuries, from climate change to global poverty, while we enjoy eternal leisure, softly hypnotized by screens, entertained and served by machine slaves. This perverse vision of the future evokes Aldous Huxley's 1921 masterpiece, Brave New World, where humans are technologically pacified into passivity through genetic breeding, drugs, copious sex, and social conditioning. As the leader of this civilized society says, quote, the world's stable now. People are happy. They get what they want, and they never want what they can't get. They're well off. They're safe. They're never ill. They're not afraid of death. They're blissfully ignorant of passion and old age. They're plagued with no mothers or fathers. They've got no wives or children or lovers to feel strongly about. They're so conditioned that they can't help behaving as they ought to behave. And if anything should go wrong, there's Soma. In the book, Soma is a miracle drug that fills its users with an empty serenity and raises, quote, a quite impenetrable wall between the actual universe and users' minds. Huxley writes of one of the characters, Soma Holiday, as soon as they got back to the rest house, she swallowed 6 half-gram tablets of Soma, lay down on her bed, and within 10 minutes had embarked for lunar eternity. It would be 18 hours at the least before she was in time again. Soma allows its users to dull unpleasant emotions and escape life's burdens, much in the same way we are encouraged to use modern technology. It is an escape from time in the same way that our tech overlords want to escape the shackles of democracy to a place where nothing is free besides capital.
But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics. And you know, there are a number of different technologies we can outline, but the task in this world where politics has become so broken and so dysfunctional is to find a way to escape from it. It's not a way to fix it, it is a way to escape.
By succumbing to technological escapism, we may be escaping life's burdens, but we're also escaping life's beauty, its passion, its equanimity, its chaotic splendor. As John the Savage says, quote, I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. In Brave New World, there is no pain, suffering, or grief. But there is also no truth or beauty, and human life is hollowed out into a shell of what it once was. Brave New World is the future that Silicon Valley is creating, and AI is only the latest in a long line of tech products that commodify the impulses created by capitalism. Before AI dehumanized us, it was advertising and social media. Before AI automation devalued our work, it was the neoliberal clawback of worker protections, fair wages, and labor unions, not to mention the previous waves of automation. Before AI extracted obscene amounts of water from drought-ridden regions and labor from hyper-exploited data workers in the global south, deforestation, industrialization, and imperialism extracted damn near everything of value while delivering very little in return. Before AI supercomputers expanded the scale of data centers, surveillance capitalism did the same thing in order to keep data on everything about you. I called this video the commodification of loneliness, but really it might as well be called the commodification of everything. Loneliness, grief, sadness, happiness, love, hate, wellness, illness, nature, security, insecurity, etc. Capital will find a way to turn all of these into mere commodities. Karl Marx wrote of commodification in Poverty of Philosophy, quote, "Finally, there came a time when everything that men had considered inalienable became an object of exchange, of traffic, and could be alienated. This is the time when the very things which till then had been communicated but never exchanged, given but never sold, acquired but never bought, virtue, love, conviction, knowledge, conscience, etc., when everything, in short, passed into commerce. It is the time of general corruption, of universal venality, or, to speak in terms of political economy, the time when everything, moral or physical, having become a marketable value, is brought to the market to be assessed at its truest value." A bit wordy, Mr. Marx, but pretty on point. The fact that Marx was able to identify this as an issue in 1847 makes me feel a little bit inadequate for making a whole video about it almost 200 years later. But hey, what can I say? I'm just a YouTube yapper. What happened to Martha in Black Mirror and Theodore in Her are not so much the result of technology, but of capitalism. Martha's grief and Theodore's loneliness had already been commodified in the form of ads for bereavement books and phone sex services, among other things. It can feel almost useless to resist the unrelenting demands of capitalism and reject the frictionless happiness that technology promises. But if we turn over the last corners of our minds that belong to us and us alone, what's the point of life? Why should we allow our relationships to dissolve into data? Why should we want to exist in a world where commerce is the only language? Why should we flatten the complexities of existence into digital simulacra? And if the answer is we shouldn't, what should we do about it? One reason why I push back slightly on the judgment and shaming of people who use AI companions is because we are all suffering under an isolation regime. This is just what capitalism does. It alienates us from each other and then sells us a solution to that alienation. The best way to resist, I think, is to reject that solution and do what they don't want us to do: reconnect with and love each other. In her book, All About Love, Bell Hooks claims that love is among the most misunderstood concepts in our world. The media teaches us that love is something you fall into, something that happens passively. But Hooks instead describes love as something that you must actively do. She quotes psychiatrist M. Scott Peck, who said, quote, "Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely both an intention and an action. Will implies choice. We do not have to love, we choose to love." Hooks shares this conviction, saying that it is in choosing love and beginning with love as an ethical foundation for politics that we are best positioned to transform society in ways that enhance the collective good. This ethic of love, or will to love, is, I think, what we need to channel in the face of, as Hooks famously coined, the imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. Hooks says that patriarchal thinking has led us to view love as a power game, one in which male domination leads to dishonesty by both parties. She writes, "The wounded child inside many males is a boy who, when he first spoke his truths, was silenced by paternal sadism, by a patriarchal world that did not want him to claim his true feelings. The wounded child inside many females is a girl who was taught from early childhood on that she must be something other than herself, deny her true feelings in order to attract and please others. Romantic love is, of course, not the only love in question. Community, family, and spirituality are all places where our practice of love is damaged by our social conditioning that tells us love is blissful, painless, and easy.
And we have been a culture that has over-valorized romantic love, that no matter how horrible and miserable your life has been as a kid or as a teenager, someday you're going to find this love and it's going to come into your life and it's going to change all of that. And many of us found that that was not so. And I think a lot of men felt that one day they'll grow up and they'll be humanized by a woman or a partner giving them love, rather than thinking about what will it mean, what will it take for me to become a loving person.
By Hooks' definition, love is the best way to end all forms of domination: racism, greed, homophobia, sexism, etc. She says that an ethic of love was central to the revolutionary social justice movements of the 60s, such as the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement and women's liberation. I and many others believe that true revolutionary movements must operate from an ethic of love. Huey Newton, co-founder of the Black Panther Party, said in a 1971 statement that, quote, "A true revolutionary vehicle will always be motivated by love and dedication to the interests of the oppressed communities." The Panthers practiced what they preached, implementing a wide array of what they called survival programs as part of their larger 10-point program. Free breakfast for children, community health programs, busing programs, and more. Programs that, by the way, were targeted by the FBI because of how successful they were at fostering solidarity among the Black community. But the Panthers also understood that mere survival was only a stopgap. They wanted liberation and revolution above all else. Newton wrote, quote, "We, the people, are threatened with genocide because racism and fascism are rampant in this country and throughout the world. And the ruling circle in North America is responsible. We intend to change all that. And in order to change it, there must be a total transformation. But until we can achieve that total transformation, we must exist." I think we would be wise to heed these words right now about the need to help each other simply exist, in a moment many are fighting for survival. Lately, I've been reading Kelly Hayes and Mariame Kaba's book, Let This Radicalize You. The book is a collection of anecdotes of reciprocal care. It doesn't pull any punches about the power we are up against, but it also provides a hopeful vision of the future, one in which the people build resilient systems of power to resist the onslaught of fascism and help each other survive. These stories are inspiring and full of love and hope, but they are stories that the mainstream media does not want to report on. Hayes and Kaba ask, quote, "Why aren't these narratives of spontaneous mutual aid more widely shared in mainstream culture? Perhaps it is because a recognition of our collective capacity for care during a moment of chaos does not reinforce state hierarchy. It does not reinforce individualism, or what the government ultimately wanted most out of the aftermath of 9/11. A greater allegiance to US militarism." The stories in Let This Radicalize You represent the radical ethic of love that Bell Hooks referred to.
Well, see, I feel like I'm trying to make radicalism be true to the spirit of itself, which is if you are thinking wrongly, that you have to be willing to change that thinking. I think the left has to begin to talk about love. I mean, was there any more radical movement in our country than civil rights, in the sense that, I mean, feminism is radical, but men and women have always lived together. The civil rights movement, the end of a certain kind of white supremacist apartheid, that was about love. And it changed us, and it changed us as a nation for the better. So I don't think that I'm, breaking with that tradition. I'm trying to re-evoke it, because by losing it, we are losing the kind of radical love of justice that has the potential to make this nation be a great nation always, and not be a nation that's false to its own values, false to that notion of really believing in freedom and justice. One of the things I say in the book is that there can be no love without justice.
To heal the gaping wound of lovelessness in our society requires imagination. And AI is literally incapable of imagining. This is why it's being shoved down our throats. Tech billionaires don't want us to dream new ways of existing. They don't want us connecting with each other in the real world or listening to different perspectives. They want us, as Kelly Hayes wrote, alone together in the glow of our screens. They want us not to augment, but to replace our imagination and critical thinking. So what can we do to cultivate an imaginative love for the future? Well, for one, we can reject the Silicon Valley lie that their techno-dystopian future is inevitable. Instead, we can imagine ways to use technology that benefits all of humanity. And yes, that can include LLMs. In her book, Empire of AI, Karen Howe wrote about the Maori radio station Te Hiku, which used AI to create a speech recognition tool for the dying Maori language of Te Reo. But they went about it completely differently from the OpenAIs and replicas of the world. Te Hiku's AI model was small and specific. It required far less compute, energy, and didn't rely on extractive exploitation that massive supercomputers require. In this way, it provides a possible alternative to today's AI models. Karen Howe writes in Empire of AI, quote, "The creation of AI can be community-driven, consensual, respectful of local context and history. Its application can uplift and strengthen marginalized communities. Its governance can be inclusive and democratic." But unfortunately, this project, which is very cool, is also very much the exception to the rule. And I think the real solutions are not technological ones at all. Zen Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, for instance, says that one thing we can do is to return to the present. He writes, quote, "To return to the present is to be in contact with life. Life can be found only in the present moment, because the past no longer is, and the future has not yet come. Our appointment with life is in the present moment. The place of our appointment is right here, in this very place. To abandon the present in order to look for things in the future is to throw away the substance and hold on to the shadow." Mindfulness means understanding that climate change may be wreaking havoc on the environment, but we still have beautiful forests and parks and mountains and streams and birds and insects. Neoliberal capitalism may be alienating us from each other, but community is there if you look for it. So I say that the purest form of resistance in this moment is to reconnect with nature and one another, because doing so will make us realize that we are worth saving. It might seem absurd to say this, but since I've started to truly understand how powerful systems are designed to keep us isolated, angry, and polarized, I've not grown more depressed or cynical or nihilistic. Indeed, the times that I did feel this way were when I didn't understand why the world was fucked up. I just knew that it was, and I felt powerless to change it. But a beautiful thing happens when you start practicing love and hope in community with others. The world stops seeming so bleak, and you realize that other people are just like you. Scared, lonely, anxious, and beaten down by the system. You start to realize all the good that happens in the world, all the people fighting for positive change, even if you don't always agree with their methods. You start to understand that most people are basically good, and are just trying to make sense of the world in their own imperfect, often downright damaging ways. How we reach these people is not through social media, or YouTube video essays, or Substack think pieces, but in real conversations had with patience and compassion. Turning to AI companions, or social media for that matter, will not help you grow and learn. They might relieve your pain and discomfort in a given moment, but long term, they will de-skill your ability to cope with pain through your own capacities. Life is not frictionless, and despite Silicon Valley's wishes, it never will be. So take pleasure in the friction. Enjoy the process of trying, failing, experiencing pain, boredom, discomfort, and the ultimate joy and release that will come when you succeed through your own will and determination. Eugenia Coita says that it's too late to touch grass, and that only a more powerful technology will save us. But this is bullshit that Silicon Valley wants you to believe. So in concluding this video, I invite you all to go touch grass. Shut the computer screen and go see a friend. If you don't have any friends, look up a bookstore in your area and find an event to go to. Or go to meetup.com and find a group you're interested in. Or look up your local library or community center schedule and find something interesting. Or join a mutual aid network or community organization fighting for a more just world. Silicon Valley wants you to think that there's a technology for anything you might be feeling. But certain things cannot be replaced. I understand that the future seems bleak right now, but I remind you that none of us can really predict the future. It just as well might be a beautiful future, and we just as well might be the ones who bring it about. So you may have noticed that last video I used a sponsor, my first ever. Several people got mad about this, and although I think most of y'all understand that capitalism isn't optional and I have to take brand deals if I ever want to make this sustainable, I do eventually want the channel to be 100% supported by the viewers. Believe me, I would love nothing more than to remove all the ads, which you probably also noticed have grown more frequent. That is another thing that's out of my control, and no, I'm not seeing any more money from them. So basically what I'm trying to say is if you support how much effort and time goes into my videos, I would really appreciate anyone who signs up for Patreon. All of my videos are there ad-free and early, and you can also see my amazing conversation with Dr. Chiriello. Although I only used a few clips, I'd recommend checking out the full interview. We talk more about the AI consciousness debate, how alienation and loneliness are mutually reinforcing, how AI can be leveraged by fascists, its danger to kids and teenagers, and more specific policy solutions. Yeah, you may also have seen like more and more creators are seeing less and less money, especially those of us who post confrontational content like mine. Not particularly this video, but like last one for sure. So yeah, basically direct support from you all is really the only way I can continue to spend as much effort as I do on these videos. Anyways, that's my spiel. I know it's annoying. I don't like asking for money, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. But yeah, you can also go to my Substack. I'm doing a book club over on there, and that is not paywalled, although you can be a paying subscriber. So there's still time to get in on that. Special thank you to Dr. Chiriello, who was kind enough to offer me his expert opinion and analysis on the industry. I will leave links to all of his work, which is free online. I especially recommend the paper, The Alienation, Companionship, Dialectic. Thank you so much for watching. That's going to do it for me. Peace and love, and I'll see you next time.